Did you ever wonder what would have happened if all 4 emperors attacked the world government together? Would the government be able to survive this attack, and who would win in this epic matchup? Well, in order to answer that, I split the government's power into 5 different levels, and with each level, their power would increase exponentially. Let's first see how would the Straw Hats do on their own, and if they fail at any point, I'll add another emperor crew to help them until we eventually reach the end where all 4 emperors would fight together. So the first line of defense for the world government would mostly consist of regular lower level marine soldiers. Although these guys are obviously really weak, there's a lot of them. Probably over 300,000. So can these guys do anything against an emperor crew? Well, despite their numbers, Luffy and the other Straw Hats have shown several times that regular marines pose no problem to them. During Enies Lobby, for example, we've seen Luffy defeat countless marines without even breaking a sweat. Even if some of them possess devil fruit powers, it should still be pretty easy for the Straw Hats. And one blast of Conqueror's Haki will knock all of them out. Okay, that was pretty easy, but now the Straw Hats move to the second stage, where everything will instantly get much harder. During this level, the regular Marines will be accompanied by Vice Admirals. Now, although we don't know how many Vice Admirals are there within the Marines, judging by what we know, there should be at least 50 of them. These guys are surprisingly resilient and even know Haki, meaning battling them wouldn't be easy. To make the situation even worse for the Straw Hats, do you know which ridiculously strong granddad is part of the Vice Admirals? That's right, Garp! And with him around, the entire crew would have to get serious. First of all, the weaker members of the crew like Chopper, Nami, and Brook would immediately have to go all out in order to survive, with Chopper transforming into Monster Point, Nami using Zeus, and Brook using his freezing abilities. This should be enough to fend off some of the weaker Vice Admirals, but when it comes to Garp, Tsuru, Smoker, or Gion, the monster trio would have to get involved. Gion is an incredibly strong swordsman, who was even considered for an admiral position at one point, meaning she would be a perfect opponent for Zoro. Sanji, on the other hand, should be able to easily battle against Smoker or Tsuru and keep them out of the fight. This would, of course, leave only Luffy and Garp, who would have to face each other. So who's stronger between these two monsters? Well, we don't really know, but one thing is for sure. It's going to be an incredibly close fight. However, even without Luffy, I still believe the Straw Hat crew could dispose of the other Vice Admirals by themselves. I mean, to be honest, although these guys were hyped up to be really powerful, they aren't. During Enies Lobby, the crew was able to deal with them without even using Haki, which tells a lot. So, after some battling, I believe the Straw Hats would be victorious and pass the second stage. Before we go any further, I want to tell you guys about Web Novel, the sponsor of today's video. Web Novel is the largest novel app where you can read a bunch of cool novels and comics for free. I recently really got into this story called The First Legendary Beastmaster, which follows a boy from a poor mining family who awakens a unique power and starts taming beasts. All beasts in the story have their own unique personalities, and watching the MC taming more and more beasts and getting stronger is really addicting. This time, the Cross Guild will join the Straw Hats in fighting the government, and this is where things would start to get interesting. We can skip the first stage as there's no reason to even discuss it, so let's see how these two crews would fare against Vice Admirals. The important thing to remember here is that Cross Guild has a lot of experienced bounty hunters within their ranks, which would make the Emperor's job much easier. The army of bounty hunters would immediately engage Vice Admirals and lower rank Marines without mercy. Obviously, they won't be able to take out the likes of Smoker or Garp, but low tier characters like Strawberry or Mozambia won't stand a fighting chance. For the stronger Vice Admirals, I believe that Mihawk, Zoro, and Luffy could easily dispatch them and secure a victory. But let's now answer the most interesting question. Could the two Emperor crews do anything against the Navy Admirals in the third stage? Well, one thing is for sure, it's not going to be an easy fight. To make matters worse, in this stage, the world government won't just rely on the strength of the admirals, as they'll also dispatch their strongest intelligence agency, CP0. The only 4 characters that are possibly strong enough to deal with admirals, in my opinion, are Luffy, Mihawk, Zoro, and Sanji. Luffy could potentially fight Akainu, Mihawk could fight Kizaru, Zoro could hold off Fujitora, while Sanji could try his luck against Green Bull. Whether these 4 could win these fights is questionable, but they should be powerful enough to at least keep the admirals busy. However, while that's going on, someone would need to take care of Lucci, Kaku, and Garp, as they are the strongest fighters besides admirals. Some of the options here are Jinbei, Crocodile, Robin, or Frankie. Although these characters are not weak and would definitely be able to put up a great fight, could they really stop Lucci or Garp? I don't think so. During Hachinosu, Garp has proven himself to be at least as strong as an admiral, while Lucci was able to stand his ground against Zoro on Egghead. Both of them are considerably stronger than Crocodile or any of the remaining Straw Hats, and they would quite honestly wipe the floor with them. So, although this battle would be a close one, the Emperors would eventually lose here again. Okay, this stage proved to be too hard even for two Emperor crews working together. But what if we added the Blackbeard's crew to the Emperor's team? Would they finally be strong enough to pass the third level? First of all, there's no point in covering the first two levels now, as the Vice Admirals would be completely obliterated. Now, when it comes to the third level, no matter how strong the Admirals are, they would have some serious problems defending against these three monsters. Besides Blackbeard being on the battlefield this time, there are also his 10 Titanic captains, which are all incredibly strong. We also have to remember that Blackbeard has a former admiral among his ranks, Aokiji, which would make this fight much easier for the Emperor's forces. The way I see this battle go is this. Blackbeard's thugs and Crossguild's mercenaries would easily take care of regular soldiers and vice admirals. While that's going on, Luffy, Blackbeard, Mihawk, and Aokiji would engage the four admirals, which should be more than enough to take care of them. This would leave the rest of the Straw Hats and all of Blackbeard's commanders to take care of CP0 and Garp. Zoro would easily fight against Lucci, as we already know he is stronger than him. Sanji could take on Kaku, which should also be pretty easy. This only leaves Garp. Now, Garp is pretty strong, but as we saw during the battle on Hachinosu, even he can't keep up with multiple high-level fighters at the same time. This is why I believe that all of Blackbeard's Titanic captains working together would eventually defeat him. With this, the three Emperors clear the third stage. And although that battle was pretty hard, that's not everything the government has to offer, as in the fourth stage, the unstoppable Seraphims would be joining the battle as well. And this would pose one huge problem for the Emperors. You see, despite having three Emperors on the battlefield with their entire crews, it would still be incredibly hard to tackle everything at once, especially with 7 Seraphims joining the fight. Each Seraphim has their own Devil Fruit ability that completely mimics the abilities of former warlords, and their strength is pretty close to theirs as well. To make matters worse, using their Lunarian abilities, they are practically invulnerable to any attacks. The Emperors would already be busy fighting admirals, so there's no way they could handle Seraphims at the same time as well. This means other crewmates would have to help them. Now, the majority of Blackbeard's crew is already busy taking care of Garp, while Zoro and Sanji are busy with CP0. This means that the only available fighters are Crocodile, Jinbei, Frankie, and the rest of the weaker members of the Straw Hats. But do these guys really stand a chance against Seraphims? Well, Crocodile and Jinbei could probably take on their duplicates, as their strength level should be relatively the same. But what about the others? Can someone like Frankie, Robin, or Nami really take on a Seraphim? I don't think so. Even if they try and put up a fight, they would quickly be overwhelmed and defeated, allowing Seraphims to attack other combatants on the battlefield and completely turn the battle in the government's favor. So despite everyone giving their all and fighting on multiple fronts, the world government would eventually win here, as the Emperors simply didn't have enough strong fighters to pull off a victory. However, that's all about to change now, as the final Emperor crew would be joining the battlefield. Red-haired Shanks and his 8 senior officers. Could the full strength of 4 Emperors of the Sea finally crush the government? Now that Shanks is here as well, the admirals would pose no problem whatsoever. From what we've seen in the story individually, Emperors should be stronger than admirals by a little bit. And now that 4 of them are on the battlefield together, each of them could tackle 1 admiral, which should be more than enough to bring these guys down. And let's just take a second to imagine how badass this would actually be. While this battle is happening, the Seraphims would make their grand appearance. However, this time, the Emperors would be more than ready to handle them. Standing side by side with their newfound allies, the red hair officers will start pushing the Seraphims back. Although Shanks' officers are really strong, defeating Seraphims isn't going to be easy, as these guys are insanely fast and durable. Some of their abilities are also pretty broken. S-Snake, for example, could turn a large number of enemies to stone in order to slow them down. This ability could potentially be a huge problem for Shanks' officers, but I believe their hockey is strong enough to resist it and eventually pull off a win here. But now comes the final 5th stage, where the government would throw absolutely everything they have at the Emperors in order to finally bring them down. So let's answer the final question. Could the 4 Emperors of the Sea, working together, actually defeat the full might of the world government? In the final stage, in addition to all troops already on the battlefield, the government would send in the Gorosei and Emu as well. Mars, Mercury, Nostromo, Peter, and their newest addition to the group, Figarland Garling, are easily some of the strongest characters in the series. They possess abilities that essentially make them immortal and invulnerable to physical damage. Not only that, they have the ability to use magic circles and teleport themselves. In their beast forms, they could easily tower over the Emperor's troops and take out a significant number of them just with their supernatural abilities. And although they are almost unbeatable, it is possible to hold them back. You see, during Egghead, we've seen Luffy and Bonnie keeping elders busy for a considerable amount of time. Heck, even Zoro, Dory, and Broggy were able to somewhat counter their attacks. Obviously, they couldn't actually defeat elders in a battle, but all I'm saying is that these monsters can be held back. However, the most important question is, who will fight them when everyone has their hands full already? Well, one important thing to note is that this battle would take a really long time, meaning that some of the fights would already be finished before the elders arrive. For example, Sanji and Zoro, who were dealing with Kaku and Lucci, would easily finish their fights and be free to help hold back the elders. Also, two more characters who would be able to help are Shanks and Luffy, who should be more than capable of defeating the two weaker admirals, Green Bull and Fujitora. This would leave Mihawk and Blackbeard to fight against Akainu and Kizaru, which seems pretty realistic. Immediately after finishing his fight with Green Bull, Shanks would jump towards Garling, while Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji would try to keep the other elders at bay. Some of Shanks' officers should also be free to jump in by now, which would really help in this fight. And even though everything seems to be under control, this is where some bad news will come for the Emperors. You see, due to this battle being extremely chaotic with a never-ending amount of government soldiers constantly attacking Emperor troops, some losses are bound to happen. Some of the weaker Straw Hats like Nami, Chopper, or Brook would eventually get injured and probably die fighting. Some of Blackbeard's and Shanks' commanders would also lose their lives fighting Garp and Seraphim's, which would leave Emperor forces severely weakened. To make the situation even worse, it's likely that a Buster Call would be initiated by the Gorosei in order to completely erase their enemies. But even with all the chaos happening around them, the Emperors would hold their own against the Gorosei pretty well. Now, the problem is, they can't really defeat them, as they have no idea how to deal any real damage to them, meaning that both sides would eventually come to a standstill, with neither side able to squeeze out the victory. So, is that it? The battle ends in a draw? Well, not quite. The full strength of the world government isn't only the Gorosei, but the Emu himself, who hasn't even shown themselves on the battlefield yet. Although we don't know exactly how strong Emu is, as One Piece's main villain, he's most likely the strongest person in the entire story right now. With them on the battlefield, the exhausted Emperor forces simply wouldn't stand a chance.